please, ladies and gentlemen, have your boarding cards out and available. Group 1 is now boarding. And now I'd like to invite Group 2, rows 27 through 32, boarding groups 1 and 2 at first class.
Wow, I can't believe after being in Japan for what seems like forever, I'm actually heading back to my home country. It's bittersweet, but as I always say, as one chapter ends, another chapter begins. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy 2026. I can't believe I'm saying 2026, but I hope your new year is starting off fantastic. My new year is starting off amazing. And of course, you know who this is. This is your girl, April. Welcome to this new episode of My Solo Chronicles in the new year. I know it's been a while since you've heard from me. We have a lot to talk about. So I'm not even going to, prolong this any longer. Let's jump right in. I entitled this episode The Return Home because, ta da, I'm back in the US. I came back to the US early November after being in Japan teaching English since I want to say early March of 2025. And it took, even though it was a tough decision to return back home, especially considering what the political climate is. I'm not going to get political because I don't want my podcast to be that. But it was hard trying to decide, should I continue to stay in Japan or should I go back home? And with a lot of things on my heart, a lot of things going on at the time while I was in Japan, cough, cough, the company I worked up under, and I want to say two people I worked up under, I felt like I really needed to return back home to the US to just regroup, refocus, and rebuild my finances. That's for a whole different episode as far as the finances in the company I worked up under. But it was a tough decision, but I felt I had to do it. And ever since I've been back, and I've only been back for 2.5 months. So by the time this episode goes up, it's going to be 2.5 months. And you would think I was away for years because my adjustment back to being in the US, it has been just like, oh my gosh. I've had a lot of WTF moments. I want to start with, just the time leading up to me actually leaving Japan. So I made the decision to put in my resignation and let the company know that the company that I worked for, to let them know that I was actually resigning from my position and that I would be leaving Japan early November. And I think I was probably, I want to say, a month and a half in before I decided, you know what, this is not for me. I'm glad I jumped into I took a leap of faith and I jumped into this new arena of teaching English. But I just felt like, yeah, this is not for me, really mentally and financially. And I put my resignation in, and I I put my resignation in literally a month and a half after just being in Japan and starting to work. So once I made that decision, once I typed up my resignation, I knew that there was no turning back. There was no way I was going to turn back. So I submitted it. I let them know October 31st will be my last day of working. And November 5th, I will be on my way back to the US. And there was no turning around, like I said. Once I talked to a few people that was within the office of the company that I work for, they tried to convince me, literally, to stay till December. I thought about it for like a couple of days because they didn't want me to, make my decision final, when in reality it was already final. I had already knew what I was going to do. There wasn't no talking me out of it. So after a few days, I literally told them, "Listen, I'm October 31st. I am done. I am leaving Japan November 5th. That's it." And they accepted it, moved forward. I worked, and I worked up to my last day. It was so hard because within the little community that I lived in, people in that community, even though they may not spoke English, they knew me. They would see me on a daily. I felt comfortable where I could actually go, which I actually did several times. I could go running at 11:30, at night, 12 a.m. in the morning, which I did several times and I felt safe because I knew that people in the community knew me. They looked out for me, and there was times where I could be at the supermarket, or I would go to like a Lawson's, or Lawson's was pretty much my go-to, or I could go to a 7-Eleven. I was always running into students and their parents. I was always running into somebody that lived around where I lived, and they would say, "Oh, April Sensei." So I felt good, but in the same breath, I was sad too because I was leaving this community that had welcomed me in such a short amount of time, but they made me feel comfortable. I can only speak for me, but I never felt like I was an outsider. Even though I knew I was a foreigner and I'm a person of color, I never felt like I was an outsider. And that's what I think really hurt my heart. Trust me, there were many days where I cried, especially leading up to when I left my apartment, headed to the train station to go into Tokyo for like the final, time. You know what I'm saying? So it was bittersweet, but like I said, there were situations and circumstances that I knew I had to come back to my home country. So I ended up taking the day that I left. So the way it happened was my last day was October 31st, and I vacated my apartment November 3rd. So I was going to walk to the train station. I didn't want to ride. I didn't want to take the taxi. I didn't want to catch a bus. I just wanted to walk because one, with my two suitcases, mind you, my two medium-sized suitcases on wheels and a backpack, I I just wanted to just take in the last sights and views of the community that I was in. The places that I ran past, it was I wanted to see those things for the last time because no telling when I'm gonna be able to come back to Japan. I got to take a final look at Mount Dyson, which I actually hiked to the top with two other people, well, three other people. So I wanted to see that before I got on the train and headed to another train station in another city where I was going to take the overnight bus to Tokyo. And it was just, as I'm walking, I'm just like, April, hold it in. Don't cry. You know, you got this. You did good while you was over here. No regrets. And I'm going to be honest with you, I have no regrets at all. And once I got to the train station, I was able to sit for a little bit and just gather my thoughts and kind of, you know, keep my emotions in check because there was people that was coming in and out and I didn't want them looking at me like I was a weirdo. Like, why is she sitting over in the corner crying? So I was able to keep my emotions in check. So I took an overnight bus November 3rd, to Tokyo, and I got to Tokyo November 4th. And I was fortunate that the Airbnb that I stayed at, the person was so kind and willing to let me leave my suitcases at the Airbnb, even though my check-in time wasn't until 4 p.m. And I basically emailed her real quick and said, "Hey, is it possible I can just leave my bags? I know my check-in time is way later. I just want to drop my bags off so that I can walk and just look at different parts of Japan or Tokyo for the last time before I fly out, which would have been the next day, which was November 5th." And she was so awesome about it. She emailed me immediately and was like, "Yeah, no problem. Whatever else you need to drop off, definitely, that's fine." And I was able to do that and just walking and looking at everything and looking at, pretty much people watching, because that's kind of what I did like the whole time I was walking around, Tokyo, November 4th. And again, I got teary eyed. And I don't know how many of you are religious, but I just talked to God and I just said, thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity, an opportunity that a lot of people do not get to have. And I got to have that, especially as someone that's single, that likes to do a lot of things solo. And I'm black. And you don't see a lot of us black people venturing out and doing things. You know what I'm saying? Because people assume that we just don't do that. So I was just thankful for being able to have the opportunity that I did. And I went and I visited, locations that I had already visited back in, September 2023 when I visited for the very first time. And it was just, again, taking in everything because I knew the next day I was flying back home and there's no telling when I would ever be back in Japan. It's not going to be long. I'm going to go back to Japan. I just don't know when because I now done started this brand new bucket list of countries that I want to go to. November 5th came and it was time to leave. And when I tell you, I actually left the Airbnb early, like early, because I was trying to prolong getting to the airport as long as I could. And there was trains that I could have took that I kept just like ignoring. It's like, oh yeah, it's like you waving off a bus like, no, I'm good, I'm good. I was just like, yeah, I'm not going to take the train yet. I'm not going to take the train yet. I'm not going to take the train yet. And it was just like, okay, April, you're going to have to get on the train because you got to get to the airport. I still had a long time before I was going to board my flight, but I knew eventually I had to get on the train. So I did. I got on the train finally. So I was at the train station in the area where my Airbnb was. No joke. This is no joke. I was literally at the train station for almost 2.5 hours. That's just how long I was prolonging trying to get on the train because my thinking at that point was, I get on this train, this chapter of being in Japan is done. It's over. And I was like, okay, let me just keep this book open for a little while longer and not get to the very last page of that book, which is my Japan adventure, right? So I did. I got on the train, got to the airport, and checked everything in because I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, this is really happening. And you know how like sometimes you don't believe something is actually happening until it actually happened, and you're like, oh snap, this is for real. What made it real for me, what made it real was after I checked in my bags, you go through security and then you got to go to customs, right? And I get to customs and there was one part where I thought I was just going to waltz right through the line like everybody else, swipe my passport and that was it. Go just head to the gate. I got stopped and the lady was like, through like Google Translate, you have to go to the other part because you got to literally go through like customs. And I'm like, oh, I thought this was customs. So she was like, no, no, you got to go to the other part. So I walk over, I stand in line. And the fortunate thing was I got to meet a lot of nice people that were leaving Japan and they had been in Japan for a year, a couple of years, or a couple of months, but they were just leaving. So we were all just waiting. So we all got to have little conversations and kind of find out about each other. Because y'all know me, I'm gonna talk to anybody that make eye contact with me, and I done said this so many times. So I get to the counter because it's my turn, and I hand the gentleman behind the counter my passport, and I handed him my resident card because I had a resident card. And he looks at me and he says in a little bit of English he could speak, why am I where am I going, how long, the typical questions, how long I had been in Japan and stuff like that. Well, once I said, oh, I've been in Japan since March, he says, you fill out this form. So I had to fill out this form. Basically, because I had a resident card, I was considered a resident of Japan, which would have been for a year had I decided to go until March 2026. So I was considered a resident, so I had to fill out this form. and then I had to come back up, which it was again another blessing because I'm standing with two other people who were actually doing the exact same thing I was doing. So we got to talking. I met a young lady that was from the state that I'm from, and then I was talking to somebody that actually is from another state that I've lived. And it was just like we were just looking at each other like, wow, we're leaving a country that we all had really, grown to love and that we've always wanted to visit, and we got that chance to do it. But, you know, because of each one of our circumstances, we were now leaving. So this is where the really emotional part. I was already emotional before. This is where it really got really emotional for me. So I get back in line to go back to the counter to now give the gentleman my passport, my resident card, this form that I had to fill out, and then answer all these questions that he was going to ask me again. I did that, and he hands back my passport, and I showed him my driver's license, which I don't know why I did that, but I did when I had my passport. I guess it was just nerves or whatever. And he takes out this staple, like this hole puncher. He takes my Japanese resident card and he stamps a hole in it, and I gasp and I go, and I was in shock. I couldn't believe. I just started crying. I literally started bawling. And he looks up at me like, okay. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And he said, calm, 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 calm. And by this time, I'm like hyperventilating because I can't believe this dude just punched a hole in my resident card. That's when it got real, when I knew that my time here is now done. I am no longer an employee or resident of Japan. And once I settled down and he handed me my resident card with this hole in it, he says, I said it was perfect English. He said English so so. He said, April Sensei, always come back. And that made me even more emotional. And I was like, damn, this is for real. I am actually leaving a country that I have been dreaming about living in and just being surrounded by so much history and culture for so long since I was little. And I love Godzilla. So ever since I was little and I would watch Godzilla movies, I was like, oh, I'm going to go to Japan. And now knowing that I got that opportunity and now it was done just by the simple hole punch of my resident card, I was like, wow, this is it. This is done. I get through the airport, I get on a flight, and once the flight took off, I said, well, another chapter has now closed, and no telling what a new chapter or chapters are going to bring going forward. But I trust my God. I have faith in him, and I know that I will be okay. Now we talk about me getting to the US. Oh my God. You know what? As Americans, we can never do right. I'm just going to say that. We always got to be extra doing something. So I get, I get into the US because now I'm at my final destination. My flight was a straight flight, which I'm so thankful for. I get to customs. And now, when I came back, just to go back a little bit, when I went to the UK to finish out my program for my degree, and I came back to the US, I didn't have to go through so much questioning, and I didn't have to be in customs that long. For me, it was just like, you know, blah 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 blah. Yes, yes, yes. No, no, no. Okay, you're good. Have a good one. Welcome back. This go through customs, and I go through the typical, where are you coming from? How long were you there for? Why were you there? Why are you back here? What are you here for? And I'm like, okay, I get the questioning that you have to ask. I get that. But when it stretched towards 5 minutes, out past 5 minutes, I was like, wait a minute. Y'all act like I'm not from here. You're looking at my passport that says I'm a US citizen. Hello. And then it was just, excuse my language, shit got real when the customs officer says, "Unfortunately, Miss Strickland, welcome back." And he kind of gave me a smirk like, "Yeah, welcome back." Because again, look at the political climate that's going on right now. So there's that. And I said, "Well, there's no place like home." So it took all of a millisecond before all that calmness I had, all that Zen moments I was having since March 2025, it took a millisecond for me to go, "What the, you know what?" I mean, you had people that were pushing me out the way. One lady kind of snapped at me and I had to kind of check her a little bit like, "Oh, you talking to the right one because you really don't want the smoke. I just been on a long ass flight and you running your mouth." So it was just like, "Oh, April, welcome back to the US." It was, and then I think too, I had like a moment of like brain fog because I was waiting to get picked up from the airport in Japan. And I've done this so many times. I wouldn't recommend it though. I'm just saying. There were so many times I would walk away from my backpack. I would walk away from my purse or my phone, just laying on a table or whatever, and I would be gone. I think the longest I had ever walked away from my stuff was like between like 5-10 minutes, and then I come back and everything was still there. So I was kind of still in that mind frame a little bit. I so I while I'm waiting to get picked up from the airport, I had my two medium-sized suitcases. I had my backpack and I had a bag of like chips or whatever that I had kind of set on the seat. And the restroom was like just a few feet walk up. I go to walk away thinking I'm still in Japan. I go to walk away and I'm halfway to the bathroom and I hear, "Hey, hey, 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 hey." And I turn around and I'm like, "Is he talking to me?" It was like one of the security guards that was walking through the airport. He says, "Where do you think you're at?" He was like, "You can't leave your stuff right there. You have to take it with you." And I'm like, "I'm just going to the bathroom." He was like, "Yeah, you need to take your stuff with you because we're not responsible for anything that goes missing when you come back." And I said, "Oh, okay. There is another indication that April, welcome back to the US. You're no longer in Japan." I think, as far as just, I wouldn't say I had reverse culture shock, but since I've been back, I noticed that, I was used to walking the streets and, nodding at somebody as a greeting to say hello or good morning. Here it's just like it took maybe all of a few days before I was like, "Yeah, you need to stop doing that." Because people were not really responsive to that. They wasn't accepting of that. It was just like everybody was on about their business, and I think that was kind of hard for me because I had gotten so used to just the friendliness, the cleanliness. And don't get me wrong, I love the US. There's no place like home, but we different. In America, we just cut differently. Um, you know, it was nobody was friendly. Everybody, you look up and it's just like people were being rude. Driving around, it's just like everybody is for themselves. Nobody's following the rules of how to drive on the street. And I was just like, wow, I'm coming back to this. Okay. Like I said, it took me a couple of days and I was like, and I started reverting right back to how I was before I went to Japan because it's almost like, it's like I'm in survival mode, because I'm back in the US. Um, Also, it's just, it was the first month and a half to almost like the end of 2025 was really difficult for me as far as being used to being back in this time zone. In a way, I'm still on that Japanese time zone, but it's gotten so much better. There were times where I didn't sleep for like a day or two because I just couldn't figure out what time it was, or at least my body couldn't. Um, there were times where I would go for a walk somewhere and come back, and it's during the day. It could be like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, in the afternoon. I'm sorry, in the afternoon, and I'm trying to take a nap because it's night in Japan. So those were kind of like the bigger adjustments for me. I hadn't started back to work just yet, so it was a good thing that I was experiencing all of this before I started work. You know, um, it just little stuff like that that I was just like, wow, I am now officially back home. And I will say the pros of being back home, at least I can say I get a check every 2 weeks. Because I wasn't that was one of the cons for being over there and working. Um I got paid once a month, and it was difficult to kind of experience uh Japan. So there was times where I had to literally, when I tell you, budget tremendously, because I had to make sure I had enough funds to pay my bills, as well as being able to buy groceries just to be able to survive. And we're talking about not getting paid until the middle of the month, and I was like, yeah, this is not conducive for me. So just like I said, the decision to come back home, there were a lot of pros as to why I needed to. But as I transitioned back, it was difficult. It was really difficult. First, like I said, you lock eyes with me into you. We're gonna be probably BFFs, and it was hard to not have that with people. Um, I definitely do not go running once it gets dark because I'm not in Japan. I will say, in the neighborhood that I'm in, people do know me. Um, some people are like, "Oh, hey, welcome back," so they know me. So that's one of the pros and kind of the comparisons to Japan. But other than that, everything else has been completely different. Um, and no place is the same. You're going to experience, or you're going to have different experiences in different places. No place is the same. If they are, please let me know where that is, because I would like to go there. So yeah, so that's been what's pretty much been going on with me. It's been a big adjustment as far as just being back home, returning back home. And I can remember my grandma used to always say, you can go as far as you want to go, as far as, living somewhere or traveling somewhere and being away from home for a bit. But just remember, you can always come back home. Don't ever forget that. And that's what I would tell anybody. Yeah, you might, have some difficult um, experiences when you return home. Like, people may not, the same people that you knew before may not be around anymore, or living situation might be a little bit different as well. Money situation might be a little different as well. But just know, coming home, you're coming home to, like I said earlier, to refocus and just mentally get yourself back to where you were when you first left, if that makes sense. I'm back in the US. I'm adjusting every day. Every day is, you take it one day at a time, and that's what I've been doing. Just taking it one day at a time. I just want to share a poem that resonated with me so much. So it says, as I travel along in this world, I'm in awe of many things, like the colors I see in the autumn or the flowers that bloom in spring. To me, there is no kind of awesome that any but home can bring, like returning to wake in my old bed to hear the birds sweetly sing. And being back home has been awesome. Like I said, it's been one day at a time for me. I don't have any regrets with the huge jump that I made going to Japan, because I'm glad that I did that, because I'd never want to get older and say, "Oh damn, I wish I could have." I want to get older and say, "Oh wow, I did that." And now home is just where it's at. Sorry for the barking in the background. So yes, but I'm just glad to be home. So I hope you enjoyed this sweet new episode, and I look forward to bringing you another new episode. But in the meantime, my moonbeams, as we begin this brand new 2026 year, have a great rest of the day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.